The frozen body lying half buried in the snowdrift wasn't something Cole Finnegan expected to find on his way back to the ranch. And when he dismounted to investigate, his heart nearly stopped at the sight of a woman's pale face framed by dark hair, matted with ice. The winter of 1882 had descended upon northern Arizona with unusual ferocity, blanketing Williams and the surrounding territories in snow that hadn't been seen in decades. Cole had ventured out that December morning to check on stray cattle that might have wandered too far from the shelter of the pine forests, never imagining he would stumble upon a human being instead. He pressed 2 fingers against her throat, searching desperately for a pulse, and nearly shouted with relief when he felt the faint flutter beneath her frozen skin. She wore a thin traveling dress completely inadequate for the weather, and her lips had turned a frightening shade of blue. There was no time to waste pondering how she had ended up here, miles from town with no horse or supplies in sight. Cole stripped off his heavy sheepskin coat and wrapped it around her before lifting her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, and her skin felt like touching marble in a winter cemetery. He secured her across his saddle as gently as possible, then mounted behind her, holding her against his chest as he urged his horse into a careful gallop toward home. The Finnegan Ranch sat in a valley sheltered by ponderosa pines, a modest operation that Cole had been running alone since his father died 2 years prior. The small cabin would never win any architectural prizes, but it was solid and warm, and right now that was all that mattered. He kicked open the door and carried the woman inside, laying her on his bed near the fireplace. His hands shook as he stoked the fire higher, then turned his attention back to his unconscious guest. Her clothes were soaked through, and he knew leaving her in them would be a death sentence. Cole had never been more grateful for the medical training his mother had insisted he receive before she passed. He worked quickly and clinically, averting his eyes as much as possible while removing the wet garments and replacing them with his warmest flannel shirt and wool socks. Her skin was mottled with cold, her breathing shallow and irregular. He piled every blanket he owned on top of her, then heated water on the stove and filled several bottles, tucking them around her body to provide warmth. For 3 days, Cole barely left her side. He fed the fire constantly, changed the heated bottles, and tried to get warm broth between her lips whenever she seemed even slightly conscious. Her fever came on the 2nd day, burning through her body with such intensity that he stripped away half the blankets and bathed her forehead with cool cloths. She thrashed and mumbled incoherently, crying out names he did not recognize and pleading for mercy from phantoms only she could see. On the 3rd night, her fever finally broke. Cole had dozed off in the chair beside the bed, exhausted from his vigil when a hoarse whisper startled him awake. "Where am I?" Her eyes were open, the palest gray he had ever seen, like storm clouds before rain. They focused on him with confusion and wariness, darting around the unfamiliar cabin before returning to his face. "You are safe," Cole said, his voice rough from disuse. "My name is Cole Finnegan. I found you in the snow 3 days ago. You were nearly frozen to death." She tried to sit up, but her body would not cooperate. Panic flashed across her features. "My sister. Where is my sister? We were traveling together when the storm hit. She was with me." Cole felt his stomach drop. "There was no one else nearby when I found you. I searched the area as much as I could before the light failed. Where were you coming from? Where were you headed?" Tears spilled down her cheeks, cutting tracks through the pallor of her skin. "We were traveling from Flagstaff to Williams. Our stage was attacked by bandits. They took everything and left us on the road. Emily, my sister, she was hurt. I tried to help her, tried to get her to shelter, but the snow came so fast. We got separated in the storm. I have to find her. I have to." She attempted to rise again, but Cole gently pressed her back against the pillows. "You are in no condition to go anywhere. You have been very ill. But I promise you, as soon as this storm breaks, I will search for your sister. I will find her if she can be found. She could be dying out there right now." The words came out as a sob. The storm has been raging for days. No one could survive out there now, but there are other ranches, other homesteads. Someone else may have found her just as I found you. What is her name? What does she look like? Emily Kelton. She is 19, with blonde hair and blue eyes. She was wearing a green traveling dress. Please, you have to look for her. And your name? Cole asked gently. Catherine Kelton. We were coming to Williams because I was engaged to be married to a merchant there. His name is Walter Grayson. Do you know him? Cole knew Walter Grayson, and the knowledge sat heavy in his gut. Grayson was a wealthy man in his 50s who went through young wives the way some men went through whiskey. His first wife had died in childbirth, the second under mysterious circumstances that the sheriff had not investigated too closely given Grayson's influence in town. That this delicate woman had been destined for such a fate made something protective flare up in Cole's chest. "I know of him," Cole said carefully, "but your concern now should be for your sister and your own recovery. Can you tell me anything else about where the stage was attacked? Any landmarks?" Catherine's eyes drifted closed, exhaustion claiming her again. There were red rocks, a formation that looked like a sleeping giant. Emily ran east. I ran west. I called for her, but the wind took my voice away. Cole knew the place she described. It was a good 8 miles from where he had found her, which meant she had wandered a long way in the storm. If her sister had gone in the opposite direction, there was a chance she might have made it to the Henderson place or even back toward Flagstaff. It was not much hope, but it was something. "Rest now," he said softly. "I will ride out at first light and search for her." Over the following days, Cole kept his promise. He rode out each morning as soon as there was enough light to see, searching in ever-widening circles from the place Catherine had described. He stopped at every ranch and homestead within 20 miles, asking if anyone had seen a young blonde woman. He checked with the sheriff in Williams, who promised to send word if anyone matching Emily Kelton's description turned up. But as the days turned into a week, hope began to fade. Catherine recovered slowly. Her body had been pushed to its absolute limits, and the ordeal had left her weak and prone to coughing fits that racked her slender frame. Cole found himself cooking meals he had not bothered with when living alone, trying to tempt her appetite with venison stew and fresh bread. He heated water for her to wash with and offered her the privacy of the cabin while he tended to the livestock and other ranch duties. She was quieter than he expected, given the circumstances. Sometimes he would catch her staring out the window at the snow-covered landscape, her expression so lost and sorrowful that it made his heart ache. Other times she would help with small tasks around the cabin, insisting she needed to be useful, folding laundry or mending his shirts with neat, precise stitches. "You do not have to do that," Cole said one evening, watching her work by lamplight. "You saved my life and opened your home to me. The least I can do is make myself helpful." She bit off a thread and examined her handiwork. "Besides, these shirts were in desperate need of attention. When was the last time you properly mended anything?" "I make do," Cole said with a slight smile, the first she had seen from him. It transformed his face, softening the hard lines that came from too much time alone and too much grief carried in silence. "Making do is not the same as doing well," Catherine replied, but there was no judgment in her voice, only a gentle observation. That night, as Cole lay in his bedroll near the fire, giving Catherine the privacy of the bedroom, He found himself thinking about the quiet woman who had disrupted his solitary existence. For 2 years, he had kept the world at arm's length, still raw from the loss of his parents and the broken engagement that had followed. Sarah Mitchell had promised to marry him, but when his father died and left the ranch drowning in debt, she had quickly found herself a husband with better prospects. The betrayal had cut deeper than he wanted to admit, and he had thrown himself into saving the ranch, working from dawn until dark, speaking to no one unless absolutely necessary. Now there was Catherine, with her sad gray eyes and determined efforts to be useful despite her obvious grief. She had not mentioned Walter Grayson again, and Cole had not brought up the subject. Part of him knew he should take her into town, should deliver her to her intended and wash his hands of the entire situation. But every time he considered it, he found reasons to delay. The weather was still too uncertain. She was not yet strong enough for the journey. He needed to search more thoroughly for her sister first. The truth, which he barely admitted to himself, was that he did not want her to go. 2 weeks after finding Catherine, Cole finally received word about Emily Kelton. The sheriff rode out to the ranch himself, his expression grim enough that Cole knew the news before a word was spoken. "Found a body yesterday," the sheriff said, removing his hat. "Young woman matching the description you gave. She was about 10 miles east of where the stage was attacked, caught in a ravine. I am sorry, Finnegan. She did not make it." Cole felt the words hit him like a physical blow, and he was not even related to the girl. "Are you certain it is her?" "Had some papers in her pocket. Emily Kelton, aged 19, from Philadelphia. We have her at the undertaker's in town. Someone will need to identify her properly and make arrangements." "I will tell her sister," Cole said quietly, "and I will bring her to town tomorrow." After the sheriff left, Cole stood outside the cabin for a long time, dreading the task ahead of him. He had never been good with words, had never known how to comfort someone in grief, but there was no avoiding this. Catherine deserved to know, deserved to have answers even if they were the worst possible ones. She was kneading bread dough when he came inside, her hands working the dough with a steady rhythm that spoke of long practice. She looked up at his expression and went very still. "They found her," Catherine said. "It was not a question. I am so sorry." The words felt woefully inadequate. The sheriff came. "She did not suffer long," he said. "The cold took her quickly." The bread dough fell from Catherine's hands. She stared down at it, at her flour-covered fingers, as if she could not quite understand how they had failed her. Then her legs gave out, and Cole was there, catching her before she hit the floor, gathering her against his chest as sobs tore through her body with a violence that frightened him. He held her while she cried, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring meaningless words of comfort. Her grief was a living thing, wild and raw, and all he could do was anchor her through it. When the sobs finally subsided into hiccuping gasps, he guided her to a chair and brought her water, kneeling beside her while she drank with shaking hands. "She was all I had left," Catherine whispered. "Our parents died last year of influenza. It was just the two of us. She did not want me to marry Walter, said she had a bad feeling about him. But I thought I was being practical, making a sensible choice for both our futures. Now she is gone and it is my fault. If I had listened to her, if we had never come west, she would still be alive." "You cannot think that way," Cole said firmly. "You could not have known what would happen. Life is full of choices, and we cannot see where they will lead until we have already walked the path. What do I do now?" Catherine looked at him with eyes that held an emptiness that scared him more than her tears had. "I have no family, no home. I suppose I should still marry Walter since that was the arrangement, but I cannot imagine standing at an altar and making vows when Emily is not there. She was supposed to stand with me. She was supposed to be my maid of honor. You do not have to decide anything right now, Cole said. Tomorrow I will take you to town. You can see your sister, make arrangements for her burial. After that, you can figure out the rest. Catherine nodded numbly, and Cole helped her to bed, where she lay staring at the ceiling long into the night. He listened to her restless turning, and knew sleep eluded her just as it eluded him. The trip to Williams the next day was somber. Catherine wore one of the dresses Cole had salvaged from her belongings, which had been found with the stage-coach wreckage. She sat rigidly in the wagon seat beside him, her face pale and composed, all her grief locked away behind a mask of control that Cole suspected would shatter at the slightest pressure. The identification was mercifully brief. Catherine stood beside her sister's body with dry eyes, one hand resting on Emily's cold forehead. "She looks peaceful," Catherine said finally. "That is something, I suppose." Cole made the arrangements with the undertaker, insisting on paying despite Catherine's weak protests. They would bury Emily in the Williams cemetery the following day. It was not much, but it was something. As they left the undertaker's establishment, a portly man in an expensive suit came striding down the boardwalk toward them. Cole recognized Walter Grayson immediately and felt his jaw tighten. "Miss Kelton, I presume?" Grayson's voice was smooth, practiced. "I received word that you had finally arrived in Williams, though under tragic circumstances. Please accept my condolences for your loss." "Thank you, Mr. Grayson," Catherine said quietly. "This is Cole Finnegan. He saved my life and has been kind enough to shelter me these past weeks." Grayson's eyes moved over Cole with barely concealed disdain, taking in his worn coat and weathered face. "How fortunate that you were found by such a good Samaritan." "I trust he has been appropriately compensated for his trouble." "It was no trouble," Cole said, his voice carefully neutral despite the anger building in his chest. "Miss Kelton needed help and I provided it." "Well, you can consider your duty discharged," Grayson said briskly. "Miss Kelton is my responsibility now. Catherine, my dear, I have a room prepared for you at my home. We should perhaps postpone the wedding a few weeks out of respect for your mourning, but there is no reason to delay unnecessarily. I am sure you are eager to settle into your new life." Catherine looked between the two men, and Cole saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, perhaps, or resignation. She opened her mouth to respond, but Cole spoke first. "Miss Kelton will be staying at my ranch until after her sister's funeral. After that, she can make her own decisions about her future." Grayson's expression hardened. "I do not believe that is appropriate, Mr. Finnegan. Miss Kelton's reputation could be damaged by such an arrangement. As her intended husband, I have a say in these matters." "My reputation is my own concern," Catherine said, finding her voice. Her chin lifted slightly. "Mr. Finnegan has been nothing but honorable, and I will not hear his character questioned. I will remain at his ranch until after the funeral, as he suggested. After that, Mr. Grayson, you and I can discuss our arrangement." Grayson's face flushed, but he managed a tight smile. "Of course, my dear. I did not mean to imply anything untoward. I simply have your best interests at heart. I will see you at the service tomorrow." He tipped his hat and stalked away, his displeasure evident in every line of his body. Catherine watched him go, then turned to Cole. "Thank you for that," she said softly. "I know I should be grateful to him for his patience, but I find myself dreading the thought of becoming his wife." "Then do not marry him," Cole said simply. "It is not that simple. I have no money, no prospects. What else am I to do?" Cole wanted to say that she could stay with him, that she could make a life at the ranch, that he would take care of her for as long as she wanted. But the words stuck in his throat, too bold and presumptuous after such a short acquaintance. Instead, he simply said, You have time to figure that out. Do not make decisions based on fear. They stopped at the general store to purchase fabric for a morning dress, and Cole noticed how the shopkeeper's wife looked at Catherine with a mixture of curiosity and sympathy. News traveled fast in a small town, and he knew everyone would be talking about the mysterious woman staying at his ranch. Let them talk, he thought fiercely. He had never cared much for gossip, and he was not about to start now. That evening back at the ranch, Cole found Catherine in the barn, standing beside his horse and stroking the animal's nose with gentle hands. She had been crying again, he could tell from her reddened eyes, but she had composed herself before returning to the cabin. "His name is Ranger," Cole said, announcing his presence so as not to startle her. "I raised him from a colt. He is stubborn and opinionated but loyal." "He is beautiful," Catherine said. "I used to ride when I was younger. My father had a small estate outside Philadelphia, and I had a mare named Daisy. Selling her was one of the hardest things I did after my parents died. When you are feeling stronger, you can ride Ranger if you like. Or I can look into finding you a horse of your own if you decide to stay in the area." Catherine turned to look at him, really look at him, and Cole felt something shift in the air between them. "Why have you been so kind to me? You do not know me. You owe me nothing." "Maybe I believe we owe each other basic human decency," Cole said. "Maybe I know what it is like to be alone and hurting. Maybe I just could not ride past someone in need without helping." "It is more than that," Catherine said. "You have given up your bed, your food, your time. You have put your own life on hold to care for a stranger." Cole moved closer, stopping a few feet away. "Maybe you are not such a stranger anymore." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Catherine drew in a shaky breath. "I am engaged to another man, are you? Or is that just an arrangement made out of desperation? Do you love Walter Grayson?" "I have never even met him until today. Our engagement was arranged through letters. He needed a wife, I needed security. It seemed practical at the time. And now I do not know what I want. Everything has changed. Emily is gone, and I feel like I am drowning. The only solid thing in my world right now is you, and that terrifies me because I barely know you either." Cole reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Then get to know me. You do not have to make any decisions right now. Just stay, at least for a while. Help me with the ranch, heal from what you have been through. Give yourself time to grieve and figure out what you really want." "What if what I want is impossible?" Catherine whispered. "Nothing is impossible if both people want it badly enough." She leaned into his touch just slightly, and Cole felt his heart hammer in his chest. He wanted to kiss her, wanted it with an intensity that shocked him, but he held back. It was too soon, too complicated. She needed time and space to process everything that had happened. "I should go inside," Catherine said, but she made no move to leave. "This is not proper." "Probably not," Cole agreed, "but I stopped caring much about proper when I found you dying in the snow. Sometimes survival matters more than propriety." That night, Catherine helped Cole prepare dinner, and they fell into an easy rhythm that felt natural despite its newness. She told him stories about growing up in Philadelphia, about her father's work as a lawyer and her mother's love of music. He shared memories of his childhood on the ranch, of his mother's cooking and his father's terrible jokes. They talked until the fire burned low, neither wanting to break the connection that had formed between them. Emily Kelton's funeral was held on a cold, clear morning with the San Francisco peaks visible in the distance, their snow-covered slopes gleaming in the winter sun. Catherine stood beside the grave with Cole at her side, her hand tucked into the crook of his elbow. She had sewn herself a simple black dress, and the color drained what little color remained in her face, making her look like a ghost. Walter Grayson attended, along with a handful of townspeople who came out of curiosity more than sympathy. The preacher said words about God's mysterious ways and eternal rest, and Catherine listened with a blank expression that worried Cole more than tears would have. After the service, Grayson approached them again. "Miss Kelton, I have been thinking. Given your recent loss, perhaps a quieter wedding would be more appropriate. We could have a simple ceremony at my home, just the two of us and a witness. That way you would have the security of marriage without the stress of a large event." Catherine stared at him. "You want to marry me immediately after burying my sister?" "I am trying to be practical, my dear. You have no other family, no means of support. Every day you delay is another day your reputation is at risk, staying unchaperoned with Mr. Finnegan." "My reputation survived being frozen nearly to death. I think it can survive a few more weeks at the ranch." Catherine's voice was cold. "I need time to mourn, Mr. Grayson. Surely you can understand that." Of course," Grayson backpedaled, though his eyes had gone hard. "Take all the time you need, but do not take too long. I am a patient man, but my patience has limits." After he left, Catherine turned to Cole. "Did he just threaten me?" "It sounded like it," Cole said grimly. "You do not have to marry him, Catherine. I meant what I said. You have choices." "Do I? What choices do I really have? I could try to find work, but who would hire a woman with no references or skills? I could return to Philadelphia, but there is nothing for me there except memories and debt. At least with Walter, I would have a home and security." "You would be miserable," Cole said bluntly. "I saw it in your eyes when he spoke to you. The thought of marrying him makes your skin crawl. Maybe misery is the price of survival, or maybe you deserve better than just surviving. Maybe you deserve to actually live." They did not speak much on the ride back to the ranch. Catherine seemed lost in her thoughts, and Cole gave her space to process. But that evening, as they sat by the fire, she broke the silence. "Tell me about your parents," she said. "You mentioned they both passed. What happened?" Cole stared into the flames. It had been a long time since he had talked about this with anyone. "My mother died of pneumonia 5 years ago. She was always delicate, and one bad winter was all it took. My father, he never really recovered from losing her. He kept working the ranch, but his heart was not in it anymore. 2 years ago, he had a stroke while checking fence lines. I found him that evening. He died in my arms." "I am so sorry," Catherine said softly. "After he died, I learned he had taken out loans to keep the ranch going, loans he had not told me about. Suddenly, I was drowning in debt with a ranch to run and no help. My fiancée, Sarah, she promised she would stand by me. But when it became clear how bad things were, she left. Found herself a banker's son with better prospects. I paid off the last of the debt 6 months ago, but by then I had gotten used to being alone. It was easier than risking that kind of hurt again." "Until you found me in the snow," Catherine said. "Until I found you in the snow," Cole agreed. He turned to look at her, his blue eyes intense in the firelight. "Catherine, I know the timing of this is wrong. I know you are grieving and confused and you have an engagement to another man. But I need you to know that having you here these past weeks, it has reminded me what it is like to have someone to talk to care about. I have not felt this alive in years." Catherine's breath caught. "Cole, I cannot. It is too soon, too complicated." "I am not asking you for anything," Cole said. "I just needed you to know. Whatever you decide, wherever you go, I want you to know that you matter. To me, you matter." Tears spilled down Catherine's cheeks. "You matter to me too, more than I should probably admit. But Cole, I am so scared. Emily is dead because of choices I made. What if I make more wrong choices? What if I let myself care about you and something terrible happens? What if something wonderful happens instead?" Cole reached out and took her hand. I cannot promise you that life will be easy or that nothing bad will ever happen, but I can promise that you would never have to face it alone." She looked down at their joined hands. "I need time," she whispered. "Can you give me that? Just a little more time to sort through everything in my head." "You can have all the time you need," Cole said, though it cost him to say it. "I will be here whenever you are ready." The weeks that followed fell into a pattern that felt both comfortable and charged with possibility. Catherine continued to recover her strength, and as she did, she became more involved in the running of the ranch. She learned to feed the chickens and collect eggs, to help with the milking, to prepare meals that actually had seasoning and flavor. Cole taught her to ride again, putting her up on Ranger and walking beside them until she regained her confidence. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk. Catherine told him about her dreams of becoming a teacher before her parents died, and financial necessity forced her to consider marriage to a stranger instead. Cole shared his hopes of building the ranch into something his parents would have been proud of maybe having a family of his own someday if he could find the right woman. They were carefully not talking about the obvious, dancing around the growing attraction between them. But it was there in every accidental touch, every lingering glance, every moment of comfortable silence. Cole found himself watching Catherine when she was not looking, memorizing the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, the slight dimple that appeared when she smiled, the graceful way she moved through the cabin as if she had always belonged there. For her part, Catherine found herself comparing everything about Cole to what little she knew of Walter Grayson. Where Walter was pompous and presumptuous, Cole was humble and respectful. Where Walter talked down to her, Cole listened to her opinions and valued her input. Where Walter made her feel like a commodity to be acquired, Cole made her feel like a person worth knowing. But guilt gnawed at her. She had made a commitment to Walter, even if it was one born of desperation rather than affection. Breaking that commitment felt wrong, cowardly. And there was the practical matter of her future. Cole had never actually asked her to stay permanently, never spoken of love or marriage. What if she was reading too much into his kindness? What if he was simply being a decent man helping someone in need, and she was foolish enough to mistake compassion for something deeper? One evening in late January, nearly 6 weeks after Cole had found her, Catherine was preparing supper when Cole came in from the barn looking troubled. She turned from the stove, immediately concerned. "What is wrong?" "I rode into town today to get supplies," Cole said slowly. "I ran into Walter Grayson at the store. He said he has been more than patient, but his patience is running out. He gave me a message for you. He expects you to make a decision by the end of the week. Either you marry him as agreed, or he will consider the engagement broken and you will need to make other arrangements." Catherine set down the spoon she had been holding with shaking hands. "I see. Catherine, you do not have to do this. You can tell him no." "And then what?" She turned to face him. "Cole, be honest with me. What exactly are you offering? You have been kind and generous, but we have been living in this strange limbo for weeks now. You have never spoken of the future, never said what you actually want from me." Cole ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. She was right. He had been a coward, afraid to put his feelings into words for fear of rejection. But she deserved better than his silence. "You want honesty? Fine. I am in love with you, Catherine. I think I have been since you first opened your eyes and looked at me. These weeks with you have been the best of my life, and the thought of you marrying Walter Grayson makes me want to put my fist through a wall. I want you to stay here with me, not as my guest, but as my wife. I want to build a life with you, have children with you, grow old with you. I want to wake up every morning and see your face on the pillow next to mine. That is what I am offering. That is what I want. Catherine stared at him, her gray eyes wide. "You love me," hopelessly, Cole said. "Completely. I know I am not much. I am just a rancher with more work than money, living in a cabin that is too small and wearing clothes that are more patches than original fabric. I cannot offer you the wealth or status that Walter can. But I can offer you my whole heart, for whatever that is worth." "Cole," Catherine whispered, and then she was crossing the room, throwing herself into his arms. "You foolish, wonderful man. Do you really think I care about wealth or status? I have been falling in love with you too, and it has been terrifying because I did not know if you felt the same way. I thought maybe I was just a burden you were too kind to turn away." Cole wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight against his chest. "You could never be a burden. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me." She pulled back just enough to look up at him, her face radiant despite the tears on her cheeks. "Yes." "Yes what?" Cole asked, hardly daring to hope. "Yes, I will marry you. Yes, I want to build a life with you. Yes to everything." She laughed, the sound bright and free. "I will break the engagement with Walter tomorrow. I do not care what anyone thinks. I choose you, Cole Finnegan. I choose this life, this ranch, this future." Cole cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Are you sure? Once you do this, there is no going back." "I have never been more sure of anything," Catherine said. "Kiss me." He did, finally closing the distance between them and capturing her lips with his. It was gentle at first, tentative, but then Catherine made a soft sound in the back of her throat and pressed closer, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like coming home and catching fire all at once. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," Cole admitted, resting his forehead against hers. "I wish you had done it sooner," Catherine said with a smile. "We have wasted so much time dancing around this. Then let us not waste any more. We can go into town tomorrow, tell Grayson the engagement is off, and talk to the preacher about our own wedding. Unless you want to wait. I have spent enough time waiting and being practical and making sensible choices. Look where that got me. No, I do not want to wait. I want to start our life together as soon as possible." They sealed the decision with another kiss, and then another, until the food on the stove began to burn and they broke apart laughing. They ate their slightly scorched supper and made plans late into the night, talking about everything from when to plant the garden in spring to what they might name their future children. It felt right in a way Catherine had never experienced before, as if all the broken pieces of her life were finally clicking into place. The next morning, they rode into Williams together. Catherine wore her best dress, and Cole put on a clean shirt and even shaved for the occasion. They went to Walter Grayson's store first, wanting to get the difficult conversation out of the way. Grayson was behind the counter when they entered, and his expression soured immediately at the sight of them together. "Miss Kelton, I see you have finally deigned to visit. I trust you have come to a decision." "I have," Catherine said, her voice steady. "Mr. Grayson, I appreciate the offer you made, but I cannot marry you. Our engagement is over. I am very sorry if this causes you inconvenience." Grayson's face turned an alarming shade of red. "Cannot marry me. After I waited patiently for you, made arrangements, extended every courtesy. This is unacceptable. We had an agreement." "An agreement I am now breaking," Catherine said firmly. "I understand if you feel I have wasted your time, but I cannot marry someone I do not love." "Love?" Grayson spat the word like a curse. "What does a girl like you know about love? And I suppose you think you love him." He jabbed a finger toward Cole. "A dirt-poor cowboy who can barely keep his ranch afloat. You will be begging on the streets within a year." "That is enough," Cole said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Catherine has given you her answer. You will accept it with whatever grace you can muster, and you will speak about her with respect, or you and I will have a different kind of conversation." "Are you threatening me?" Grayson demanded. "I am stating facts. Catherine is no longer your concern. She is mine, and I protect what is mine." Catherine put a hand on Cole's arm. "Let us go. There is nothing more to say here." They turned to leave, but Grayson's voice followed them. "You are making a mistake, Catherine. When you realize what a fool you have been, do not come crawling back to me." "I will not," Catherine said without turning around. "Goodbye, Mr. Grayson." Outside, Catherine took a deep, shaky breath. "That was harder than I thought it would be." "You were magnificent," Cole said, pulling her close. "I am so proud of you." Their visit to the preacher went much better. Reverend Thomas was a kind man in his 60s who had known Cole since he was a boy. He listened to their story with sympathetic eyes and agreed to perform the ceremony the following Sunday, giving them a week to make whatever preparations they needed. "I am happy for you, Cole," the Reverend said, shaking his hand. "You have been alone too long. And Miss Kelton, I can see that you care for each other deeply. That is a strong foundation for a marriage." They spent the rest of the day in town, buying supplies and telling the few people Cole counted as friends about their upcoming wedding. The news spread quickly, as news always did in small towns, and by the time they headed back to the ranch, Catherine was sure the entire town was gossiping about the jilted fiancé who had chosen the cowboy over the wealthy merchant. "You think I have ruined your reputation completely?" Catherine asked as they rode home in the fading light. "I think our reputations will survive," Cole said. "And I think in a few months no one will care. They will have new gossip to occupy them." "I hope you are right." That night, Catherine moved her few belongings into Cole's room officially, though she insisted on propriety until after the wedding. Cole grumbled good-naturedly about it, but respected her wishes, returning to his bedroll by the fire. The days until their wedding passed in a blur of preparations. Catherine sewed herself a new dress, cream-colored with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Cole cleaned the cabin from top to bottom, fixed the loose board on the porch steps, and even picked wildflowers despite the winter cold, managing to find a few hardy blooms near a sheltered south-facing slope. The morning of their wedding dawned clear and cold. Catherine woke early, her stomach a tangle of nerves and excitement. She could hear Cole moving around in the main room and smiled at the familiar sounds. In a few hours, she would be his wife. The thought filled her with a joy so profound it nearly brought tears to her eyes. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. A handful of Cole's neighbors attended, along with the sheriff and the doctor and a few other townspeople who had come to know Catherine during her recovery. Walter Grayson was notably absent, which suited everyone just fine. Catherine wore her new dress with wildflowers in her hair, and Cole wore his best suit, looking handsome and nervous as he waited at the altar. When Catherine walked down the aisle on the arm of the kindly rancher who owned the property adjacent to Cole's, her eyes were only for her groom. Cole watched her approach with an expression of such love and wonder that it made her heart soar. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Thomas began, and Catherine barely heard the words that followed. She was too focused on Cole, on the way his hand trembled slightly when he took hers, on the tears that shone in his eyes when he repeated his vows. "I, Cole Finnegan, take you, Catherine Kelton, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you in sickness and health, in poverty and wealth, for all the days of my life. I, Catherine Kelton, take you, Cole Finnegan, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you in sickness and health, in poverty and wealth, for all the days of my life." When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed her with a tenderness that made her forget they had an audience. Applause broke out and Catherine blushed, but she could not stop smiling. The reception was held in the church hall, with food contributed by various neighbors. There was music and dancing, and Catherine found herself passed from partner to partner as the ranchers and their wives welcomed her into their community. Cole watched from the sidelines, a smile playing at his lips, until Catherine broke free and pulled him onto the floor. "Dance with your wife, Mr. Finnegan," she said. "Yes, madam," Cole replied, sweeping her into his arms. They moved together with an ease that came from weeks of learning each other's rhythms, and Catherine rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Are you happy?" Cole asked softly. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Catherine replied honestly. "A few months ago I was traveling west to marry a stranger, terrified and alone. Now I am married to a man I love beyond measure, surrounded by people who already feel like family. It feels like a dream." "If it is a dream, I never want to wake up," Cole said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. As the sun began to set, they said their goodbyes and headed home to the ranch. The cabin had never looked more welcoming, smoke curling from the chimney and lamplight glowing in the windows. Cole helped Catherine down from the wagon, then swept her up into his arms. "What are you doing?" Catherine laughed. "Carrying my bride over the threshold," Cole said. "It is traditional." "I have already been living here for weeks," Catherine pointed out, but she wrapped her arms around his neck and let him carry her inside. Cole set her down gently, and they stood in the middle of the cabin, suddenly shy with each other. The atmosphere had shifted, becoming charged with anticipation and a touch of nervousness. "Catherine," Cole said softly, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "If you are not ready, if you want to wait, we can. There is no rush." "I do not want to wait," Catherine said, placing her hand over his. "I want to be your wife in every way. I want to start our life together tonight." Cole's eyes darkened, and he pulled her close, kissing her with a passion that had been restrained for too long. Catherine responded in kind, her fingers tangling in his hair as she pressed against him. They undressed each other slowly, reverently, discovering each other with gentle hands and whispered words of love. Later, lying in Cole's arms with the firelight casting dancing shadows on the walls, Catherine felt a peace she had never known. Cole's hand traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder and she smiled against his chest. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," Cole replied. "Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for taking a chance on this life." "It was the easiest decision I have ever made," Catherine said. She lifted her head to look at him. "Cole, I need to tell you something. When you first found me in the snow, part of me wished you had not. I was so tired of fighting, so tired of losing everyone I cared about. I thought maybe dying in the cold would be easier than facing whatever came next." Cole's arms tightened around her. "Catherine, let me finish," she said gently. "I need you to know that you did not just save my life that day. You gave me a reason to want to live. You reminded me that there is still beauty and goodness in the world, that love is possible even after devastating loss. You healed something in me that I thought was broken beyond repair." "You did the same for me," Cole said quietly. "I had given up on the idea of being happy. I thought I would just work the ranch until I was too old to work anymore, and that would be my life. But then you came along, and suddenly I could imagine a future again. A real future, with love and family and joy. You healed my heart, Catherine. You made me whole again." They kissed again, slow and sweet, sealing their promises to each other. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, and snow began to fall softly, blanketing the world in white. But inside the cabin, Catherine and Cole were warm and safe in each other's arms, beginning the first night of their new life together. The months that followed their wedding were the happiest of Catherine's life. Winter gave way to spring, and she threw herself into learning everything about ranch life. She proved to be a quick study, mastering tasks that would have seemed impossible just months before. She learned to tend the vegetable garden, to preserve food for the winter, to help with calving season. Cole was a patient teacher, always ready to show her how to do something rather than just doing it himself. They worked side by side from dawn until dusk, and in the evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the mountains, talking about their plans for the future. Cole wanted to expand the herd, maybe buy the adjacent property if it ever came up for sale. Catherine talked about starting a small school for the children of the surrounding ranches, putting her education to use. In late May, Catherine realized she had not bled when expected. She waited another month to be sure before telling Cole, wanting to be certain before raising his hopes. When she finally shared the news, Cole's reaction was everything she had hoped for. He let out a whoop of joy and spun her around in his arms, laughing like a child. "A baby," he kept saying, pressing his hand against her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Catherine asked, though his joy was obvious. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Cole said. "Catherine, you have given me everything. A wife I adore, a real home, and now a child. I feel like the luckiest man alive." The pregnancy was not easy. Catherine suffered from terrible morning sickness that lasted well into her second trimester, and the summer heat made her uncomfortable and irritable. But Cole was endlessly patient, bringing her cool water and fanning her when the heat became unbearable, rubbing her feet when they swelled and holding her hair back when the nausea struck. As Catherine's belly grew, so did their excitement. They spent evenings choosing names and planning how to rearrange the cabin to make room for a cradle. Cole built a beautiful crib from pine he had cut himself, sanding it smooth and rubbing it with oil until it gleamed. Catherine sewed tiny clothes and blankets, marveling at how small everything was. In February of 1883, almost exactly 1 year after Cole had found her in the snow, Catherine went into labor. It was a long, difficult birth, lasting nearly 20 hours. Cole stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and wiping her face with cool cloths, murmuring encouragement even when Catherine was sure she could not continue. Finally, just as dawn broke, their son entered the world with a lusty cry. The doctor placed the baby in Catherine's arms, and she looked down at the tiny, perfect face with tears streaming down her cheeks. "He is beautiful," she whispered. "Cole, look at him." Cole was crying too, unashamed of his tears as he gazed at his son. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Catherine, you are the strongest person I know." They named him Samuel James Finnegan, Samuel after Cole's father and James after Catherine's. Little Samuel had his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair, and from the moment he was born, he had both his parents wrapped around his tiny finger. The first months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful. Catherine had never known she could function on so little sleep, but somehow she managed, fueled by love and determination. Cole was a devoted father, getting up for middle-of-the-night feedings even though he had to be up at dawn for ranch work. They took turns walking the floor with Samuel when he was fussy, sang him lullabies, and marveled over every tiny milestone. By the time Samuel was 6 months old, Catherine felt like she had finally found her rhythm. She could manage the housework and the baby and still help with some of the lighter ranch duties. She had also started giving reading lessons to the children of 2 neighboring families, meeting with them twice a week in her kitchen. It was not the proper school she had dreamed of, but it was a start. One evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch watching Samuel crawl around on a blanket, Catherine leaned against Cole's shoulder with a contented sigh. "You ever think about how different our lives could have been?" she asked. "If that storm had not hit, if you had taken a different route that day, if I had married Walter Grayson as planned." "I try not to," Cole admitted. "The thought of you married to that man makes me angry, and the thought of never meeting you at all is unbearable." "I used to think my life was over when my parents died," Catherine said softly. "Then I thought it was over when Emily died, but really, it was just beginning. All that loss and pain led me here to you, to this life. I do not know if I believe in fate, but I am grateful for whatever forces brought us together." "I am grateful you fought to survive in that snow," Cole said. "I am grateful you gave me a chance. I am grateful for every single day I get to spend with you." Catherine turned to kiss him, slow and sweet. "I love you, Cole Finnegan." "I love you too, Catherine Finnegan." Samuel made a happy gurgling sound from his blanket, and they both laughed. Their son was already trying to pull himself up on the porch railing, determined and fearless. "He is going to be a handful," Catherine predicted. "Just like his mother," Cole teased, and Catherine swatted his arm playfully. The years passed in a blur of work and love and laughter. Samuel grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved the ranch and followed his father everywhere. When he was 3, Catherine gave birth to a daughter they named Emily, after her sister. Little Emily had her mother's gray eyes and a sweet, gentle nature that balanced Samuel's wildness perfectly. Cole expanded the ranch as he had hoped, buying additional land and building a larger house when the cabin became too cramped for their growing family. He had a natural talent for raising cattle, and his reputation for fair dealing spread throughout the territory. The Finnegan Ranch became known as one of the most successful operations in northern Arizona. Catherine finally opened her school when Emily was old enough to attend. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, and history to the children of the surrounding ranches, using the parlor of their new house as a classroom. She loved teaching, loved seeing young minds light up with the joy of learning. It gave her a sense of purpose beyond being a wife and mother, though those roles remained central to her identity. As their children grew, Catherine and Cole made sure to tell them the story of how they met. Samuel and Emily loved hearing about the day their father found their mother in the snow, and how love had blossomed from such unlikely circumstances. Catherine always made sure to talk about Aunt Emily too, keeping her sister's memory alive for her children. "Your Aunt Emily would have loved you both so much," Catherine would say, and her children would nod solemnly, understanding that their namesake had been important and loved. When Samuel was 10 and Emily 7, Catherine gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Daniel and Grace. The twins were a surprise and a delight, keeping everyone on their toes with their antics. Cole laughed more than Catherine had ever heard him laugh, delighting in his children's personalities and achievements. Through it all, Catherine and Cole's love for each other never wavered. They made time for each other despite the demands of the ranch and the children, stealing moments alone whenever possible. They would take evening rides together, or sit on the porch after the children were asleep, talking and holding hands just as they had in those early days. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked one night when they had been married nearly 15 years. "Giving up the chance at an easier life. You could have had servants and fine dresses if you had married Grayson." "And I would have been miserable," Catherine said firmly. "I have never regretted choosing you, Cole, not once. This life, with you and our children, is everything I ever wanted, even when I did not know I wanted it." "I am a lucky man," Cole said, pulling her close. "We are both lucky," Catherine corrected. "We found each other against all odds, and we built something beautiful together." As their children grew and eventually started families of their own, Catherine and Cole settled into the role of grandparents with the same joy they had brought to parenthood. They watched Samuel take over the running of the ranch, bringing new ideas and energy to the operation. They attended Emily's wedding to a young lawyer from Flagstaff, wiping away tears as their gentle daughter promised to love and honor her chosen partner. The twins, Daniel and Grace, both developed wanderlust as they grew older. Daniel became a surveyor, traveling throughout the territory mapping new settlements. Grace married a doctor and moved to California, though she visited often with her children. Catherine and Cole supported all their children's choices, proud of the independent, capable adults they had become. In their later years, Catherine and Cole could often be found sitting on the porch of the house he had built for her, watching the sun set over the mountains they both loved. Their hands were weathered and lined with age, but they still fit together perfectly, fingers intertwined. "You remember the first time I kissed you?" Cole asked one evening, his voice carrying the rasp of age. "Of course," Catherine said with a smile. "You asked me to marry you and I said yes, and then I told you to kiss me. You looked so shocked that I had been so bold." "I had wanted to kiss you for weeks by that point," Cole admitted. "But I was afraid you would reject me, afraid I was not good enough for you." "Silly man," Catherine said affectionately. "You were always good enough. You were everything." "You saved me, you know," Cole said seriously. "I was dying inside long before I found you in that snow. I had given up on happiness, on love, on all of it. Then you came into my life and suddenly everything had color again. Everything had meaning." "We saved each other," Catherine corrected gently. "That is what love does. It heals the broken places and makes us whole." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple. Somewhere in the house, they could hear the laughter of grandchildren visiting for the weekend. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and thriving, a testament to their years of hard work and dedication. "I would do it all again," Catherine said suddenly. "Every hardship, every loss, every difficult moment. I would go through it all again if I knew it would lead me here to you, to this life." "As would I," Cole said, lifting her hand to his lips. "You are my greatest blessing, Catherine Finnegan, then, now, and always." "And you are mine," Catherine replied. "My cowboy who found me in the snow and taught me how to live again." They watched the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, still holding hands, still as in love as they had been on their wedding day decades before. They had built a life together from the ashes of their separate tragedies, had created a family and a legacy that would endure for generations. Their love story had started with an act of rescue, but it had become so much more than that. It had become a partnership, a friendship, a grand adventure that had exceeded anything either of them had dared to dream. Years later, when Cole passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, Catherine held his hand and whispered words of love until his last breath. She grieved deeply, as one does when losing a life partner, but she also felt profound gratitude for the 50-plus years they had shared. She had known true love, had experienced joy beyond measure, and had built a family that would carry their legacy forward. Catherine lived another 5 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, telling stories of the Wild West and the cowboy who had saved her life. She spoke of love and resilience, of second chances and choosing courage over fear. When she passed, peacefully in her sleep much as Cole had, her family buried her beside him on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. Their headstone was simple but perfect, reading, "Cole and Catherine Finnegan. He found her in the snow. She healed his heart." Together, they built a life of love. And on certain winter nights when the snow falls soft over northern Arizona, Some say you can still see two figures on the porch of the old Finnegan ranch house, sitting close together and holding hands, their love enduring beyond death itself. The house still stands as a testament to what they built together, and their descendants still work the land, carrying forward the legacy of courage, love, and the belief that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the very best ones. Samuel Finnegan, their eldest, made sure the story of his parents was written down and preserved for future generations. He wanted his own children and grandchildren to know about the remarkable love story that had given them all life. He wrote about the blizzard and the rescue, about the difficult choices his mother had made, about the love that had bloomed between two wounded souls. The story became a cherished part of the Finnegan family history, passed down through the generations. It reminded them that love could be found in the most unlikely circumstances, that strength could emerge from tragedy, and that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is choose hope over despair, love over security, and possibility over fear. The ranch itself became a landmark in the area, known not just for its successful operation, but for the love story that had founded it. Neighbors and visitors alike would hear tales of Cole and Catherine, of how a cowboy's compassion and a woman's courage had created something beautiful and lasting. Emily, their daughter, became a writer in her later years, penning a novel based loosely on her parents' story. It became a modest success, read by women across the West who saw in Catherine's journey a reflection of their own struggles and triumphs. Emily made sure to dedicate the book to her aunt, the first Emily, whose death had been so tragic but whose memory had lived on in the love and stories of her sister. The twins, Daniel and Grace, each named one of their own children after their parents, ensuring that the names Cole and Catherine would continue in the family. They told their children stories about their grandparents, about the kind of love that endures through hardship and grows stronger with each passing year. And so the legacy continued, generation after generation, a reminder that even in the harshest winter, even in the darkest moments, love can bloom like a flower in the snow. Catherine's choice to trust Cole, to choose love over security, had rippled forward through time, affecting not just her own life but the lives of countless descendants who would never have existed otherwise. The ranch that Cole built and Catherine helped nurture continued to thrive well into the 20th century, adapting to changing times while maintaining the core values its founders had established: hard work, integrity, compassion, and above all, love. Family remained central to the operation, with Finnegans of each generation contributing their own talents and passions to the enterprise. When Arizona became a state in 1912, the Finnegan family was there to celebrate, remembering Cole and Catherine, who had helped tame the wild territory and transform it into a place where families could thrive. By then, Catherine had been gone for several years, but her influence lived on in every aspect of the ranch and the family she and Cole had created. The little cemetery on the hill where Cole and Catherine rested grew over the years, welcoming other Finnegans who had lived full lives and were ready to rest beside their ancestors. But Cole and Catherine's graves remained at the center, the patriarch and matriarch of a family tree that spread wide and strong. Their story became more than just a family legend. It became a source of strength during difficult times, a reminder that love and determination could overcome almost any obstacle. When droughts threatened the ranch, when economic hardships made survival seem impossible, when personal tragedies struck, the Finnegans would remember Cole and Catherine. They would remember how two people had started with nothing but each other and built something that lasted. Visitors to Williams, Arizona, could still hear stories about the Finnegan Ranch and the remarkable love story that founded it. The town itself had grown from a rough frontier settlement into a thriving community, and the Finnegan family had been part of that growth from the beginning. They had contributed to schools and churches, had served as sheriffs and mayors and council members, had woven themselves into the very fabric of the place Catherine had nearly died trying to reach. The irony was not lost on the family that Catherine had been traveling to Williams to marry a man she did not love, only to find her true love in the snow before she ever reached the town. But it was a gentle irony, one that spoke to the mysterious ways life works, how our plans and the universe's plans for us are often very different things. As the decades passed and the Wild West became history rather than current reality, the story of Cole and Catherine Finnegan took on an almost mythical quality. But those who had known them, or who had heard first-hand accounts from those who knew them, insisted there was nothing mythical about it. It had been real as the love they had shared, as real as the family they had built, as real as the land they had worked together. And perhaps that was the most important part of their legacy, not that their love had been perfect or easy, but that it had been real. They had fought and made up, had struggled and persevered, had doubted and found faith. They had been human, flawed and wonderful, and they had chosen each other every single day of their lives together. Their story was a testament to the power of human connection, to the resilience of the human spirit, to the transformative nature of love. It reminded everyone who heard it that we are all just one act of kindness away from changing someone's life, that we are all just one choice away from a completely different future. Cole had chosen to stop when he saw a shape in the snow. He could have ridden past, could have assumed it was just drifted debris. But he had stopped, had investigated, had cared enough to help a stranger. That one choice had changed everything. Catherine had chosen to trust Cole to stay at his ranch, to open her heart despite her grief and fear. She could have insisted on going to Walter Grayson immediately, could have honored her commitment out of obligation rather than examining what she truly wanted. But she had chosen differently, and that choice had changed everything. Two choices, two people, one extraordinary life built together. As the sun set on the Finnegan Ranch one last time in this story, as the descendants of Cole and Catherine gathered for a family reunion celebrating the anniversary of their ancestors' meeting, they raised glasses in a toast to the couple who had started it all. To Cole and Catherine, Samuel's great-grandson said, his voice carrying across the assembled family, who found each other in the snow and built a love that outlasted the mountains. May we all be so lucky, and may we honor their memory by loving as fearlessly as they did. To Cole and Catherine, the family echoed, and the sound of their voices carried across the land their ancestors had loved, a benediction and a promise that the legacy would continue, that the love would endure, that the story would never truly end as long as there were Finnegans to remember and to tell it. And somewhere in the fading light, if you looked carefully, you might have seen two figures standing on the porch of the original ranch house, now preserved as a family heritage site. You might have seen them holding hands, watching their family with pride and joy, their love still as strong and vital as it had been on the day they first admitted it to each other. Because some love stories do not end with death. Some love stories echo through eternity, touching lives across generations, reminding us all of what is possible when two hearts choose each other against all odds. The Wild West had been a harsh, unforgiving place, but it had also been a land of second chances and new beginnings. Cole and Catherine had embodied that spirit, had proven that even in the coldest winter, even in the darkest moment, love could bloom and flourish and create something beautiful that would last forever. Their story was not just about a cowboy who found a woman in the snow. It was about two wounded souls who healed each other, who chose love over fear, who built a life that exceeded anything either of them had dared to imagine. It was a story of hope and resilience and the enduring power of human connection. And it was a story that would never be forgotten,